All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take Sharp and Shapiro. A reminder, by the way, Joe Walsh will be joining us tomorrow, so that'll be interesting. Interesting guy. But as I mentioned, on Friday, Donald Trump took the two events and combined them into a bizarre Twitter taunt against a Democratic presidential candidate who just decided to take his name out of the hat, Seth Moulton. And we wanted to get Seth back on the show today, and he graciously has said he would do it, and he joins us right now. Seth, I appreciate you so much for coming on. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to be back, Brian.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us again. Always appreciate it. Always an honor to have you on. So I want to ask you the first question right off the bat, okay? President Donald Trump, quoting right now, says the Dow is down 573 points, perhaps on the news that Representative Seth Moulton, whoever that may be, has dropped out of the 2020 presidential race. Democrats and Republicans, Seth, have backed you on this one. And I, as many others on social media, have told Donald Trump who you are. You are a war hero with a degree from Harvard. You've won, medals for your heroism. And what was your first reaction? When you first saw that tweet, did you see it yourself or did someone text you? Who told you about that?
I literally got told about it in the middle of a press conference. So I was speaking to the press, and one of the reporters is like, oh, wait, I need you to comment on this. And she read the tweet, and, I kind of understand what he was saying. But look, what he said is that the stock market went down 400 points, actually went down more than that. Because I got out of the race. So obviously Wall Street wanted me in the race, was hoping I would be the next president. So I think the president was trying to insult me, but he actually gave me a great compliment. You know what? I'll take it.
That shows you what a moron our president is. It was actually a backhanded compliment. That's incredible. So you heard about it. To call somebody like you, regardless of your politics, to say whoever that may be, I mean, how insulted? Were you insulted at all when he makes a statement like that, or is that
I don't care. You can't be insulted by Donald Trump. I mean, this guy's a coward. He's a draft dodger, and he's a bully. He's a classic schoolyard bully who fundamentally tries to bully people because he's weak. He has no self-confidence, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's his orange hair or his series of bankrupt businesses or whatever, whatever has given him such low self-esteem. But that's sadly just the way that he operates, and you can't get offended by it. You honestly just have to laugh it off.
You must have felt pretty good, though, the fact that many war heroes like yourself, many people that are either in the military or have been in the military, had your back, no matter whether there was an R next to their name or a D, whether they were a Paul. Many people have come forward. Not everybody, by the way, but many people have come forward, I have noticed, in support of you. I know you're very close friends with, a lot of people that are still up there running for president of the United States, Pete Buttigieg, Beto O'Rourke. A lot of people have come to the forefront, said so many great things about you, and by the way, well-deserving. That's got to make you feel pretty good, right? I mean, talk to me a little bit about the support you've gotten over the past 48 hours.
Well, it's been great, but, this is what our politics should be about, right? It shouldn't be constantly bashing each other. It should be, giving credit where credit's due and having, an honest discussion about, who people are and everything. And look, so it's been great. I haven't been following all the details. I've actually been focused more than anything on my wife and my daughter for the last 48 hours, not the president's tweets or the counter tweets or whatever. But yes, of course it means a lot. And it's something I've always tried to do too. When a Republican across the aisle does something noteworthy, especially if it's something that's politically courageous, but especially if it's something that took, going against the president or going against his or her own party, I always make a point of going up and saying, thank you for showing a little bit of political courage. Thank you for doing the right thing.
Absolutely. If you're just joining us, former Democratic presidential candidate Seth Moulton. Okay, Seth, so I know you've explained this a little bit, but if you don't mind repeating yourself here, you decided on Friday that you'd be taking your name out of the hat. Explain to us why you made that decision and how difficult that decision was.
It was a difficult decision. I mean, I got in this race to win, and I'm not a quitter. I mean, far from it. I ran in my first political race in 2014, and it was a primary in Massachusetts for my congressional seat. And I ran against an 18-year incumbent, and people for a year and a half told me, Seth, you're going to lose this race. In fact, they even went a step further. They said, Seth, not only are you going to lose, you'll never be involved in politics again because you dared to take on this incumbent. And I had to ignore them. I had to say, no, I think I'm doing the right thing. And I just had to keep fighting. That's who I am as a Marine. So to make the decision to not keep fighting was hard. It was very hard.
Mm-hmm.
But I always said that I got in this race to win. And if I ever got to a point where I just didn't see a path to the nomination, then I wasn't going to string all my volunteers and supporters and teammates along. I was just going to get out and, focus on the long game, focus on what I could do, both in Congress and, to help whoever our nominee is. And so I just came to that point on Friday where I was looking at this race, and it just seems like it's kind of boiled down to a three-way race at this point between Biden, Warren, and Sanders. In many ways, it's a question of how far left we're going to go as a party. And, there's no one else who's even out of single digits.
Yeah, that's true.
That's just, I don't think that's a good thing, by the way. I don't think it's a good thing at all. I mean, they had Steve Bullock on this interview right after me on Friday, and they were trying to, use my words against him. And I said, look, I think Steve Bullock is exactly the kind of person who should have more of a voice in this debate, because, he's the only governor of a state that Trump won. I was the only combat veteran in the race, and yet both of us have been repeatedly excluded from the DNC debate stage. I don't think that's a smart way to choose the best nominee to take on Donald Trump.
I agree.
But nonetheless, that's what the DNC has chosen. That's where we are right now. Mm-hmm. And so I decided I'm just, discretion is sometimes the better part of valor, and I stepped aside.
If you're just joining us again, former Democratic presidential candidate Seth Moulton. So you just named those three, and I agree with you. Obviously, Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden, and Sanders are the three, and I think Harris might have an outside chance if she really performs better in some more debates upcoming. But I asked you this question, Seth, when you were in studio. You were still a presidential candidate, and you gave me the appropriate answer. I said, is there anybody else that you would support? And you gave me the answer and said, look, well, I want to win. And I totally understand that response. But now that you are out of the race, of those three or anybody on that stage, is there anybody you could say, I think this person gives us the best chance to defeat Donald Trump? Are you there yet?
Well, first of all, let me just say, just to be clear, I'm going to answer your question, but just to be clear, I think that anybody in the current field right now, including, frankly, the Republicans who are challenging him in the primary, would be a better choice than Donald Trump. So, I want to make sure that everyone's clear on that. But in terms of the three that are left, look, I think they're all bringing, interesting perspectives to this race. And I am not going to make an endorsement on your show. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
But I will say that Vice President Biden is a mentor and a friend of mine, and I think he can be a unifying leader for the country. And I do think ultimately we've got to choose the right person to take on Trump. That's what we should be thinking about here, because I don't think he's going to be as easy to beat as a lot of Democrats want to believe.
And you mentioned that Kamala Harris isn't included in the top three, and I think that she is the most difficult one for Trump to campaign against because she is a woman and she's a woman of color. I don't see that with Sanders or Biden or Warren. Out of Sanders, Biden, and Warren, who gives Trump the most difficult approach as far as without insulting them and making it all about policy?
Well, that's an interesting question, right? But it's not. I don't know the answer to that question exactly, but the thing is that that's not the only question you have to ask, because it's also about just who can appeal to a lot of Americans. I have a lot of fellow veterans who supported Trump, and a lot of them say to me, Seth, we didn't like voting for a draft dodger. We didn't like voting for someone who flaunts the Constitution. But what was the alternative? And the point they were making is they just felt that Hillary Clinton, was out of touch with a lot of people in America. And so you got to ask that question too. And I think there's no question that when it comes to understanding, what it's like to grow up as a working family, I think Joe Biden's got a lot of insight there. And I think he does have an ability to connect with people that some of the other candidates do not. When I was campaigning for veterans running for the House in the last couple of years, there's a couple of places I went where two of the only Democrats who got invited were myself and Biden. Down in Kentucky, Amy McGrath, who's now running against McConnell, she introduced me and said, part of her introduction was to literally say, there's only two national Democrats I'm inviting to come campaign for me, Joe Biden and Seth Moulton. And the point is that there are some people in our party who can connect with a broad swath of Americans, and there are some people who can't.
Yeah, no question. Again, if you're just joining us, Seth Moulton on the line. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Joe Walsh. Joe Walsh is actually joining us on the show tomorrow. So I guess this is a two-part question. What are your thoughts on that? Walsh has certainly said some controversial things in the past. And number two, what would be a question that you would ask him? Because based on what you just said, you would rather have Joe Walsh as president of the United States than Donald Trump, correct?
Yes, that's correct. But let me just say, I've got a lot of problems with Joe Walsh, too. And I'm just I don't know much about him. I'm just learning about some of the things that he's said. But, they're despicable.
Right.
There's a lot of reasons what you should be asking Joe Walsh on the show about is is he really a racist? Because some of the things that he said are just outright racist statements. Yep. Of course, the president has a long history from preventing black people from renting his apartments when he first got all that cash from his dad and started his so-called businesses. This is a president who's using racist tropes from the White House every day. I kind of think that wouldn't happen with Joe Walsh, but I'd want to be, sure. That's the kind of question you should ask him.
Yeah, I think I will make one. Sorry to interrupt you, Seth. I would make one distinction in that one thing that Joe Walsh has done, and I'll give him a little bit of credit for this, that the president has not, is Joe Walsh has apologized for all those remarks. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean we should all forgive him. I think time will tell, but I do give him a little bit of credit for admitting he was wrong and apologizing, where has Donald Trump ever apologized? Besides, the grab him by the P word, he apologized, and then 24 hours later he said, I don't think that's my voice, so that's not really an apology. But Donald Trump never apologizes for anything, so I do think that is an important distinction.
Look, it takes courage to apologize. And you got to understand whether the apology is genuine, whether it is an acknowledgement that what was said was, did Joe Walsh say those things and he genuinely realized that it was a mistake and it's not, representative of who he is and that's why he apologized? Or did he say those things because they are his core beliefs and he just apologized to try to get out of it? That's the question you got to ask. Right. But if it's a genuine apology, it takes courage to do that, and it's certainly not something we see from President Trump.
Do you think 20 years ago, in an era where social media was not as prevalent as it is now, that you would have gotten a lot more recognition and respect for your resume, considering the fact that you got yourself into Harvard, you have a military experience at the highest level. Right now, you were the only candidate on the Democratic side outside of Tulsi Gabbard that had the military experience. Do you think that 20 years ago you would have gotten a lot more recognition for that?
Well, I do think social media has kind of taken over the world of politics. And I'm not going to complain about social media. It's just the way of the world. It's just part of I have to tweet. I'm a politician. I'm not afraid of it. But the way the DNC has set up the rules so that, you get on the debate stage by going viral on social media or having a bunch of people click, give you dollar donations on your website, I'm not sure that's the smartest way to, judge whether or not you got a good candidate. And that's kind of the way that this has been set up. Look at Tom Steyer. Tom Steyer is a billionaire, a hedge fund guy who, made a lot of money buying distressed debt, so companies that were in trouble and, playing arbitrage with that kind of stuff. And he just is basically buying his way onto the debate stage by spending $10 million on Facebook ads. Basically, a transfer from one billionaire in Silicon Valley to another. And all of a sudden he qualifies for the debate where Steve Bullock and I do not. I'm not sure that's a
No, it's ridiculous. Listen, I have been the first one to say this, before you even came on our show, that I think it is outrageous that you were not able to be on the stage. Look at your accolades and what you've done for this country, the patriot that you are, number one. And quite frankly, the support you got was enough support for you to be on that stage, certainly for those first few debates. And I'm totally on your side. Now, with that being said, you have respect from just about everybody except for maybe the president of the United States, unfortunately. But with that being said, when you look at your future, do you say to yourself, okay, maybe this is something I can do in 2024? I know it's early, but do you still leave that door open that you could run for president again down the road?
Well, Brian, thank you. It's very, 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 very early. But the one thing I'll say is that, while I wasn't able to sort of crack the social media donor nut here on this, the response I was getting from voters on the ground was incredible, because I think voters who would come and hear me and listen to my pitch in person were like, we need some unifying leadership in this country. We need someone who can bring Americans together, not further divide them. And maybe having someone with a little bit of combat experience, maybe the first Marine ever to be sitting in the White House, would be a good thing. And the problem was I just wasn't reaching enough voters. So I did a town hall in Iowa a week and a half ago, and this guy in the front row just said, "Look, Seth, like, you know, you're great, you're this and you're that," and he even compared me to a whole bunch of other candidates in a very favorable light. But he said, "We need more people to hear this message. So, you know, why are there 30 people here and not 500?"
Right.
Well, that's a product of just the way the press and the media and the social media is treating this, election cycle. It's not necessarily good ideas that are always winning out. It's just, you know, whoever is the sort of flavor of the moment and gets a big kick on social media, and then a ton of people show up to their event.
Sure. I wanted to ask you this because I think this is important. A lot of people have been openly criticizing Donald Trump for the way he's treated John McCain. You know, a few days ago, it was 1 year to the day that, we lost the war hero, John McCain. As I've said, the president of the United States going after McCain. The comments saying that he doesn't respect McCain because he was a POW, he was captured. Then just several months ago, talking about John McCain's funeral, saying that he should have gotten a thank you and a congratulations for all he did for John McCain's funeral, stepping on the grave again of a war hero. What do you make of this? What would be your response to Donald Trump in regards to all this and this John McCain nonsense that apparently Donald Trump still has an obsession with John McCain of insulting him, a history?
Trump's a coward. I mean, he's obviously scared by John McCain. The fact that McCain can still be so intimidating to the president, even from the grave, just highlights the incredible divide between a true American hero in John McCain and this weak, draft dodging president who feels that he has to go and bully everyone who he sees as an enemy. I mean, that's why you said, unfortunately, you're not respected by the president of the United States. I don't think that's unfortunate at all. I think that's just mean the category of closer to people like John McCain than Donald Trump, and I'm happy with that any day of the week.
That's a good point.
You're totally right. I don't understand why he even said what he said about you, considering the fact that he doesn't have any military experience. You do. It was just unnecessary. How did that help Donald Trump calling you out on Twitter like that, Seth?
Look, I'm not going to try to pretend what the president is thinking, but what some of my, some people I know, including one Marine I served really closely with, said, look, he clearly knows exactly who you are, and he's really thrilled that you're not going to run against him. And
that's a good point.
So, in other words, I think that the reason he went after me is exactly the same reason he went after John McCain, because he doesn't know how to deal with people who are, who answered the call to serve the country, who were actually willing to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And if you look, I mean, it's not just me and McCain. There's many others that he's insulted throughout his career that do the right thing.
Because clearly he is not the man that you are, or the heroism of somebody like a John McCain in yourself. He knows that, and he's so insecure with himself, rightfully so. To me, that makes complete 100% sense, Seth. I think you should be a therapist, because I think you just did get inside his head.
I don't know about that, but you look at the other side of it too. Like, just turn it around. I mean, you can judge a person by his or her friends. Right?
Sure.
I mean, look at some of Trump's friends and who he hangs out with. Jeffrey Epstein. Right?
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right.
I mean, Rudy Giuliani, who got high marks as a mayor, but I mean, he can't get out of his own way with telling lies in circles on TV. I mean, these are the kind of people that Trump hangs around with. Jared Kushner. I mean,
yeah.
Give me a break.
It's insane. I want to ask you one more question before we let you go, Seth. I know that my understanding is you're hosting a veterans roundtable today with retired General Stanley McChrystal. Can you talk a little bit about that? And certainly, it appears as though you're putting your money where your mouth is when it comes to continue to play a forceful role in the Democratic Party. I want to give you a chance to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually just got back from it. And it was
okay. How was that?
Event. It couldn't have gone better. It was a real substantive discussion. And you know what I loved about it is it was organized by my campaign. It was something that we had on the books as part of the presidential campaign, but it was always bigger than that, because we're trying to inspire veterans to run up and down, the ticket to get involved in politics. And it was also in part organized by some veterans who were involved in the Democratic Party of Virginia. It was just across the border in Virginia, which is actually where General McChrystal lives. And yet you could have listened to that discussion and been a Republican, and you wouldn't have been turned off. Even though it was organized by my Democratic campaign, by the Virginia Democratic Party, it was a very just thoughtful discussion about the issues that could have appealed to a Democrat, an independent, or a Republican, and we had a bunch of them there. And that's
awesome.
Exactly the kind of debate that we should be having. We talked about national security, we talked about national service, we talked about what should be being discussed on the presidential stage, but is not. So it was a great event, and we're going to keep doing that around the country. I'm committed to championing all the issues that I raised in the course of this campaign, talking about national security, about national service, how more people should be serving their country, and also about mental health and how we've got to address mental health and have the courage to talk about it. Those are things I'm going to keep working on. And this event today was just the first step.
That is so awesome, Seth, the work that you will be continuing to do, that you have done for so long. I've said this before, and I'll say again, it's people like you that make this country so great. I know you are a modest guy, but let's just call it for what it is. You are a true hero in this country, and your voice deserves to continue to be heard, and I know it will. Seth, you have always been so gracious with your time on this show, and we would love to continue to have you on and maybe get your analysis of some of these Democratic debates, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely, and I always love taking your callers, too, so next time we'll have time for that.
Next time we will absolutely, absolutely do that. So, Seth, thank you so much, my man. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Thanks, both.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Seth.
There you go. Seth Moulton, former presidential candidate. Trump obviously tweeting at him, which was disgraceful. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back right after this. You're listening to The Vegas Take on the all-new 101.5 FM, 720 AM, KDWN.